Well, as I say, there are chief drivers coming through from the temporary employment categories and then the kind of increase we saw in the unofficial economy as well. Just how much of a concern is that for you? Because it still means that we've got employment dropping off in the formal sector of the South African economy.
That's quite right. I think there are two trends that are overlaid with each other. The first is that temporary work in the formal sector has been growing faster than permanent jobs. And I think there are several reasons for that. The first is that employers are still very tentative about the economic recovery. There are lots of uncertainties about the state of the South African and world economies, so they're not prepared to commit their budgets to expanding their workforces just yet. So they hedge their bets by adding temporary rather than permanent staff to their employment mix. The second trend is that the formal sector of the economy is gradually informalizing, which is a trend that has been in process for the last 15 years. And I think what's interesting about September is that it's really one of the highest growth rates of informal activity that we've seen. How does this fit back into a picture of the economy? Well, we observe the consumption sectors doing quite a lot better in South Africa than the production sectors. So mining, manufacturing, construction, these sectors are shedding jobs, and retail and wholesale trade, financial services, and of course the perennial government sector are adding jobs. So there are many themes that sort of overlaid with this data, but I think those are the key ones. And
a dominant theme is that you've still got government, a key driver of the kind of job growth we are seeing, the little that is filtering through, coming through there.
We saw last week Minister Gordhan indicated to provincial, local and national government that they must keep a tight watch over payrolls. And I think it's too early to say that the government has lost control of the government payroll, but I think it's something we have to watch out for. Really, most of the job creation in the formal sector this year has been in the government sector. And we need to watch that trend very closely, because it's not really job creation and it's not ultimately sustainable.
Yeah, something that the Finance Minister has been vocal about today is the fact that, you know, we've got government likely to announce new measures to support struggling manufacturers and this, you know, the report saying in his medium-term budget, which is being released next week. Just how keenly, what are you looking towards that? What are you anticipating there? Because if you're looking at manufacturing, for example, we've seen a falling back of jobs, that fallback coming through, what, down 16.7%?
No, manufacturing, to some extent mining and the construction sectors have been very weak. Well, I mean, it's difficult to say just what kind of measures are possible. I mean, South Africa's manufacturing sector has been in decline for the past 30 years. To come up with a package suddenly in the context of the global financial crisis, of protectionist measures perhaps, of budgetary measures and others, I think is really going to be a drop in the ocean. The key problem is manufacturing competitiveness. South Africa has gradually lost labour productivity in the manufacturing industry, and I think that is the reason for job cuts. If we can't restore that productivity, I think government packages to bail out manufacturing firms are a pipe dream.
And that's exactly something that he's reiterated as well. The Finance Minister saying competitiveness and improvement in productivity is what we need to be focusing on. Just taking a look at, you know, the kind of movement we're seeing. We've got the informal sector now representing 32.8% of the economy. Just how much of a worry is this for you, the kind of trend that's been set into motion here?
Well, what we're observing generally is the informalization of the employment situation in South Africa, and trade unions have long been complaining about this. They call it casualization, but it's really a process whereby small employers employing less than 10 and possibly less than 50 employees are deciding to go into the underground economy where they don't pay income taxes, that they do pay other taxes, and where employees are employed without employment contracts and protection of labour laws. We've got to go back to the root causes of why the informalization is occurring. And I think we've got to look at the tax burden to some extent on small employers, and we've got to look primarily at labour laws and regulations that make it very difficult for employers to sanction or impose sanctions against poor performing employees, and collective bargaining, which really forces wages to rise above productivity.
Well, with that changing dynamic that's evolving in this space, I mean, what is surprising is that we've got that continuing long-standing trend in terms of employment of high-skilled and office labourers, gaining traction. So that grew by 8.8% over the month, whereas employment for low and semi-skilled workers fell back 6.4%. Why that disconnect between the kind of trend we're seeing in terms of the segment of the workforce that is growing and then who's actually in demand here?
Well, the consumption sectors are dependent on financial professionals, accountants, lawyers, doctors, really all the professional services. And as the consumption sectors grow, demand for high-skilled individuals grows. But at the same time in South Africa we have immigration laws that prevent the import of foreign high-skilled workers. And as a result, we're observing the shortage of high-skilled people. I mean, there are currently 829,000 vacancies in the high-skilled sectors of the labour market. So, yeah, basically we're observing several trends. The first is immigration laws. The second is increasing demands for high-skilled workers. And the second is really tough conditions in the production sectors of the economy. So they're shedding low-skilled and semi-skilled workers.
What's your outlook moving forward, Loane, as we, wrap this 2011 period up as we venture into the fourth quarter?
Yeah, I think between now and the end of 2012, South Africa is going to shed around 390 to 400,000 additional jobs, primarily in the manufacturing, construction, and related sectors, basically the production sectors of the economy. So we really have an oncoming train ahead of us from an employment point of view. But that's not to say the economy is going to perform poorly. I mean, unemployment is performing poorly for its own reasons primarily. So the outlook is grim. I think the government is going to be forced at some point to take a stand on the factors that are preventing employment, because I think we've got a long pipeline of bad news ahead.
And do you see Labour actually coming to the party as well? Because we've seen some realization of this hitting the textile industry, and specifically we've seen them, coming to the fore, putting on the table the ability to make a sacrifice when it comes to those higher wage bills moving forward. Do you see others, tearing a leaf out of that book?
You know, the agreement reached between Minister Patel, who's also Secretary General of SACTWU, and employers in the textile industry must be seen in its context. Really all it involves is a 30% reduction in the wages of new workers. There's no discussion about the wages of existing workers. There's no discussion about how to link wages better with productivity. So look, there are many obstacles that have to be overcome before we can suddenly miraculously predict a turnaround in the textile industry. But it is important. It's the first recognition from government and trade unions that wages are important to employment. And perhaps we're going to see more of that recognition over the next 16, 15 months. But the textile industry agreement, I don't think we must overstate just how much it's going to achieve.